shall we begin?
Hellraiser is one of the longest running horror franchises ever. Even if you haven't seen 1 out of 11 movies, you know who this guy is. Today on Horror Movies Explained, we are going to be talking about the birth of Pinhead. Stick around and you'll definitely learn something new about your favorite cenobite and the origin of his name. So who is the scary hell priest known as Pinhead, and where did all the pins come from? Let's dive in. Originally conceived by Clive Barker in his book The Hellbound Heart, Pinhead was never meant to be your average villain. He was initially supposed to be more of a cultured and refined character who followed a code of honor. One of the reasons Barker decided to write and direct the film adaptation is because he felt like no one else understood Pinhead like him. He knew that the Hell Priest's ability to elicit fear was based in his intelligence and his assurity of himself. Much like Dracula and Hannibal Lecter, Pinhead's fear factor comes from his capacity of mind and acute awareness in every act he partakes in. Even when he is ripping people to pieces, he does so in a deliberate manner. But where did the name Pinhead come from? Well, in the first movie, he doesn't even have a name, or at least not one that we get to hear. He is only referred to in the credits as the leader of the Cenobites. Creator Clive Barker refers to him as the priest in the comic books that he eventually winds up writing around the character. The name Pinhead was originally coined in the makeup department on set, obviously referring to the jeweled nails that cover his head. Eventually, this name was learned and adopted by fans, and in Hellraiser 3, he is finally slyly referred to as Pinhead. Even though Barker never really liked the name, thinking that it was undignified, it stuck. Though he only gets about 8 minutes of screen time in the first movie, he quickly became a fan favorite. However, his rise in popularity meant that as films went on, he would be pushed into more of a typical slasher-type villain like Freddy Krueger or Michael Myers. Even being portrayed as explicitly evil and demonic in the later films to come. But I guess, who wouldn't become a little evil with all those nails in their skull? It's basically the Clive Barker version of a lobotomy. Still, Pinhead was able to keep a certain degree of refinement that set him apart from other slashers of the time. One key element being his origin story. Pinhead wasn't always a torture-loving leader of the Cenobites. Originally, he was Elliot Spencer, a captain in the British Expeditionary Force during World War I. A charismatic and empathetic man with high regard for humanity, who became traumatized through his time in war. Losing his faith in humanity and suffering a terrible case of PTSD, he decided to travel the world and indulge in a hedonistic lifestyle. Since therapy wasn't all that popular in the 1920s. Finally growing bored of earthly experiences, he chose to seek out the Lament configuration. A box that possesses the power to open the gates of hell and unleash the Cenobites. What the hell is a Cenobite, you may ask? Cenobites are a disfigured extra-dimensional race united by their common interests in ritual torture and death. It is heavily implied that many of the sexless, sadomasochistic entities were once human themselves. Once transformed, they become tasked with capturing whatever unlucky victim solves the riddle of the demonic Pandora's box. The boxes themselves were created by a mass-murdering French architect who intended to design a puzzle that would reveal deeply held secrets or satisfy the dark needs of anyone who solved it. Originally, it was made for a rich duke who had a strong hankering for murder and an interest in the occult. The box was designed to play a tune that intensified the closer one gets to solving the creepy death puzzle. After summoning the Cenobites, Spencer is taken to hell to be remade through years of merciless torture. Eventually transformed into Pinhead, a newly powerful, basically indestructible being that possessed many supernatural abilities. His main mode of torture was through summoning hooks and chains by mind control to disfigure his victims. He quickly rose through the ranks, becoming one of Leviathan's most fearsome servants. Pinhead is also very fashion-forward compared to the other slashers we know and maybe hate to love. Even ahead of his time in many ways, Barker drew inspiration for the look from a mix of Catholicism, punk rock fashion trends of the time, and the S&M scene he had experienced in both New York and Amsterdam. His genderless outfits have been used recently by the original Pinhead, Douglas Bradley, to support the newest actor to take over the role. Jamie Clayton, a transgender actress, recently stepped up to the pinned plate in the newest gender-swapped reboot from the franchise.
The body can be made to feel.
Bradley, weighing in on the news of the reboot, questioned if Pinhead even had a gender to begin with, mentioning how he wore a skirt during his time in the role and expressed excitement over the new casting decision. According to Clive Barker, Pinhead, along with the rest of the Cenobites, has always been genderless. Even saying that in the original story, the character had the light and the breathy voice of an excited girl. I guess maybe it's time we ask Pinhead what their preferred pronouns might be.
Stop me, child, but you don't have to hear the music. Just give me the box.
Another fact about the movie is the great lengths that the actors took to keep Pinhead a mystery. For example, Douglas Bradley made himself scarce on set, staying away from castmates when they weren't actively doing a scene together so they wouldn't become desensitized to his presence. He kept this up long after the first movie wrapped on production, making the crew only refer to him as Pinhead and never saying his real name, leading to his ability to escape the press and fame for a long time after the movies were released. He even said that when he showed up at a rap party, most of the crew didn't know who he was because they had never seen him out of makeup or even heard his real name.
Pain.
Initially, this was one of his fears and reasons for almost passing on the role altogether, believing that it would hurt his career if people couldn't recognize him in the role. But eventually, he had a change of heart, and he embraced the villain for 8 of the 11 films, cementing himself in the Horror Hall of Fame and allowing the franchise to terrorize us all the way into the newest 2020 reboot. He almost starred alongside Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger in the 2003 movie Freddy vs. Jason. Originally, the two characters were supposed to meet up in Hell, where they were to be greeted by, you guessed it, Pinhead. Sadly, the concept was dropped from the final script, a missed opportunity to show us what happens to villains when they get to Hell. Though his powers and motives change throughout the movies, Pinhead remains a consistent horror legend, as permanent in our nightmares as the nails in his head.
Down the dark decades of your pain, this will seem like a memory of heaven.
Interested in more horror movie deep dives? Make sure to hit that bell and subscribe to Horror Movies Explained to satisfy all your creepy cravings.